Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk about some very important charts. What I think I see from studying these charts in great detail. And yes, these are charts that will depict what's going on in the world, and specifically in the United States, and what's going on in the Trump family. And so put all your opinions aside and just listen to what the charts have to say. So as an astrologer, I find that it's very, very important to help people see the future so that they can possibly avert things, change things, because we do have free will. And those of you that have watched my videos know I have the big long story about the Kennedys. When President Kennedy came to Dallas, I was about in first or second grade, and my mother went to go see him with my sisters at the airport. And we have pictures of her shaking his hand. She took pictures right in his face. And her and my sisters are even on the History Channel in a clip, because when he walked down the stairs to the crowds, the first people he walked up to were my mother and sisters. So that was amazing. But of course, the unthinkable happened that day. But as the story goes, and this is true, the night before he came to Dallas, I was watching television and a lady came on and begged him not to go to Dallas, and pretty much said, or you'll be assassinated. That lady's name was Jean Dixon. And from that day on, I always wondered, would the world be different if he listened to her? And how did that lady know? It got me into astrology. So looking at the charts, I'm seeing something very peculiar coming up, and I wanted to share it with everyone. Possibly maybe to change, alter things, and maybe somebody that's watching can help change the course of history if this is indeed what the charts are telling me. So it's very interesting, because the first thing I started noticing was the number 22. And what I mean by that is I noticed that a lot of the Trumps, and even people associated with the Trumps, had planets at 22 degrees. And it even came up that looking at a date that is the 22nd of August, that came up. And I started looking, and let us see some of the answers that I surmise over these incredible details. So we're going to go chart by chart, and particularly looking at the charts that I have the birth times for, because it makes it more accurate. We can actually see the true chart when we have a birth time. So here's another thing that came up. I started looking at the 22nd of August, because there's a certain aspect that happens that day that happened in September of 2025. And that aspect is when the Sun and K2 came together exactly. They came together exactly, and it deals with the day that Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And those of you that follow me know that I put out a video way before saying, on this day, when the Sun and K2 come together, the Sun is leaders and K2 is loss, and they're in Leo, and Leo rules with politics and leaders again. I said we will lose someone in power, and it will be very political. That was Charlie Kirk's death, that assassination. So the Sun goes through the entire zodiac once every year, and therefore it will conjunct K2 once a year. But Rahu and Ketu stay in a sign for a year and a half. So it's likely that the Sun will conjunct Ketu once, and there'll be a second time before Rahu and Ketu change signs. So it was last September that Rahu and Ketu was in Leo, Rahu was in Aquarius, but Ketu was in the late degrees of Leo, and the Sun conjunct it. It was in September. But now Ketu and the Sun will come together again, still in Leo, but in the very early degrees of Leo. As a matter of fact, they will come together at 5 degrees of Leo, August 22nd. So, interestingly enough, the fact that they're in Leo, and remember the Sun is leadership and kings and rulers, presidents, while Ketu is loss, and 5 degrees of Leo is conjunct the fixed star Regulus, which is the star of kings and leaders. So not only is the sign, but that star is so specific. Now, I went back the last time that Ketu and the Sun came together on that star, and it was in the 1930s, and no president died. So there's a possibility that this is not going to predict this, but I went back and looked at the presidents at the time, and none of them had lineups in their charts with this degree. But this time we do. This time we do. So that's what I want to show you, how I'm seeing this degree marking around 5 degrees of Leo, or 5, and definitely what we count is a 3-degree orb for its exactness. So within 3 degrees of a natal planet, if it's conjunct or opposed or making any specific aspect, but it must be within a 3-degree orb. And the tighter, the more intense. So I wanted to pull up the chart first. Let's pull up the chart of Eric Trump. So looking at Eric Trump's chart, I noticed his Sun is at 22 degrees of Sagittarius. And don't forget the Sun in the United States chart is 22 degrees of Gemini, exactly opposed the US Sun. And that represents leaders. Of course, don't forget the Sun in a chart also represents your father. So the fact that his Sun ties up with the United States Sun and his father's president is significant too. But most importantly, this point of 5 degrees of Leo, the Sun and Ketu, are exactly opposite Eric Trump's moon at 4 degrees of Aquarius, within 1 degree, and it's in his 8th house. The 8th house is a difficult house. It can deal with death, scandals, absolute problems, deep, dark stuff. So that's interesting because the moon in his chart does rule his ascendant. It's who he is. He needs to watch where he is and what he's doing around that time. Now, another thing about that day is I'm going to start keying in some other planets to see if they affect anything. And on that day, I pulled up where Saturn and Mars were, since they're the 2 malefics that cause problems. Saturn was around 19 and 20 degrees of Pisces, or will be, and Mars is 13 degrees of Gemini. Let me put that chart of August 22nd up so you can see that. So looking at that, Eric Trump's Sun is being squared, aspected by Saturn at 20 Pisces, and Mars is opposing it. So, but most of all, Rahu's on his moon opposed that Sun Ketu conjunction in Leo. So that's Eric Trump's chart. So I thought I'm going to use all the charts I can that I have birth times for. And I have the birth time for Donald Trump Jr. So looking at his chart, the Sun Ketu conjunction at 5 degrees of Leo sits right on Donald Trump Jr.'s natal Saturn. It sits at 6 degrees of Leo. He does not have a 22-degree planet, although Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto are sure close. Pluto at 23, Uranus at 21, and Neptune at 23. But I'm looking for that 22-degree. It's just significant. But that Sun Ketu is right on his Saturn, and Saturn rules his 9th house. But it's in his 3rd house. The 3rd house is brothers and sisters, the 9th house is the father, and Saturn also rules the 8th house of death. Something could happen to somebody in the family. So once again, it's situated in the 3rd house of siblings, but his natal Saturn that's being hit by the Sun Ketu rules the 8th house of corruption or death and the 9th house of the father. So this is what I do when I get worried. I do this with my whole family. When I get worried about something going on in my chart, I look at everyone's chart because it will be there. So next, let's look at, I have Baron Trump's chart. Let's put up Baron Trump's chart. So looking at his chart, he has Mars at 22 degrees. It is in his 4th house, but it's 22 degrees. So the 4th house is the family. And is that ever disrupted all the time? I will say that. And the Sun and Ketu in Leo with Rahu in Aquarius. Look where his Sun Rahu sit. He has a Sun conjunct Rahu just like Trump does. Trump has them in Taurus, but his are in Pisces. And remember, the Sun is the father. Rahu makes it more extreme, an extreme father. Absolutely. With a large ego. Sun Rahu. But most importantly is the fact that his Sun sits at 5 degrees, which is in a 6-8 relationship, a quincunx, with where the Sun Ketu will be at 5 degrees of Leo. That's pretty wild. So works for his chart, something very difficult. Now the next one. I pulled up Ivanka Trump's chart, but I don't have a time for her. So, but when I pulled up her chart, even though we don't have a time, she has her natal Saturn at 22 degrees. It's in Virgo. So I thought that was very significant. And when Saturn on August 22nd will be at 20 degrees of Pisces, it will oppose her natal Saturn. And she does have Mars in Leo at 11 degrees. So it is, all of this is in the nakshatra called Magha. First 13 degrees, 20 minutes. First 13 degrees, 20 minutes of the sign of Leo is in the nakshatra Magha, which symbol is a throne, represents kings and leaders. So then, who else did I look at? JD Vance. So it should affect his chart as something's happening. And his ascendant sits at 7 degrees of Leo. Remember, I give it a 3-degree orb for its exactness, and that degree of Sun K2 is at 5 degrees of Leo, smack dab on his ascendant. And another thing that's happening in his chart is he has Rahu in the 10th house, just like Trump does. They both have the same ascendant. They both have Rahu in the 10th house, which is extreme. But I can't help but notice Uranus, the planet of sudden unexpected changes. And it moves slow. It takes 84 years for Uranus to go through all 12 signs of the zodiac. But it is sitting exactly on his Rahu in the 10th house, which means a sudden unexpected change in his career. Yes, there's other things, but I'll leave that on its own. Okay, so the ascendant is exact. I have some others, but I think I'm going to get to the point. Then I looked at the chart of the United States, which when I pulled it up, the Sun K2 at 5 degrees of Leo sits in the 9th house. This can deal with travels, with rules, with laws, with regulations. But it's exactly, well, within a 3-degree orb, opposed the moon, which is in the 3rd house in this chart, which deals with communications, the media, all of that. The Sun K2 is opposing it. That's a big deal. And of course, you know, the Sun in this chart sits at 22 degrees. And also during that time, Saturn on August 22nd will be at 20 degrees of Pisces. I'm rounding it up. And Mars is at 13 degrees of Gemini. So Saturn is aspecting the Sun, squaring it, while Mars is situated right in between both Venus and Jupiter here. And Venus rules the 6th house of accidents, and Jupiter rules the 4th house of the homeland. So possibly this could be a strike on the homeland and not necessarily these individuals. It could be a strike on the homeland. Something big is happening in the United States at this time. So let's look at Donald Trump's chart, last but not least. Going right to his ascendant, it sits at 6 degrees of Leo. So the Sun K2 are exactly on his ascendant, and his Mars sits at 3 degrees of Leo, so it's sitting on his Mars, which does rule the 4th house of the homeland or his personal family, something happening with the personal family, but it is the homeland too. And when I look at where Saturn is in his 8th house, and Mars at 13 degrees sits right on his Mercury, which rules the 11th house, which deals with income, money, wealth. So this could deal with the country. The United States economy, by the way, starting from this event, will be deteriorating. This is starting the end of August. I see June, July being great, and then an event happens around, maybe not exactly, but around August 22nd. It could be exact. I keep seeing 22. Something big is about to happen. So I thought maybe I should put this out here so that maybe something can be done. Something can be done to avert things. And yeah, it's pretty definite, though, that something is due to happen, so we have to be prepared. That's what astrologers do. They prepare their clients, they prepare the people. And it's better to be prepared than to be hit blindsided, because then you can do things that can help and help yourself. So with that, I hope you've gained some interest in astrology, and if you have, hey, I have the best school out there. Go to universityofvedicastrology.com. And don't forget, if you want to get all my predictions delivered free to your email address, go to galacticcenter.org and sign up for my free newsletter. And don't forget, the Galactic Planner actually takes your chart, just like I did for all these individuals, and gives you exactly these transits that could affect you personally. Try it out, galacticplanner.com. And last but not least, if you want to be part of my spiritual community, we meet weekly and talk about events and things happening in the world. Join my Patreon. You will find that all on galacticcenter.org. Thank you.